And a new report from the Federal Reserve shows American household debt is at an all-time high of $18 trillion. Debt grew by $93 billion at the end of 2024, and half of that increase came from new credit card debt. Now, New York Federal Reserve researchers are partially blaming holiday shopping and high interest rates. Let's bring in ABC News correspondent Elizabeth Schulze and Bankrate senior industry analyst Ted Rossman for more. Elizabeth, Americans' total credit card balances now stand at a record high $1.2 trillion. How significant is that number, and what else stood out to you from this report?
Yeah, and that's a big number, Diane. $1.2 trillion, that's up 7% compared to a year ago. So it does show that those credit card balances are going up overall. Some of this is signs of a healthy economy, right? People are out spending money. They feel comfortable buying stuff. Like you said, during the holiday shopping season, that is a time that we typically see people put things on their credit cards, whether it's gifts for other people or gifts for themselves. And part of this is that more people are using cards overall. That's a trend we've seen in the economy over the past few years. But there is this growing debt balance. It's been going up steadily over the past couple of quarters and couple of years, and that is something that we're looking at when you say how much of those people are falling behind on their payments. What we know is that about typically half of people do pay their credit card balances in full. So if you're doing that, not so much of a concern. What is concerning is people who are getting behind on their payments, especially given the really high interest rates that we're seeing, Diane, right now, about 20%. I talked to Ted a lot at Bankrate, and we're looking at those rates, and they're not really coming down much. And that's a concern if you are behind, because that interest can add up really quickly when you're looking at your payments every month.
Yeah, it's easy to get stuck in a cycle there. That said, Ted, you say credit card balances almost always rise from year to year. So is this no big deal?
It's a big deal for some households. My favorite industry saying about credit cards is that they're like power tools. They could be really useful or dangerous depending on how you use them. And it is roughly half and half as far as cardholders who pay in full and avoid interest and take full advantage of rewards and convenience and buyer protections. And then you have the other half who's paying debt month after month. The average interest rate is 20%. That's what becomes a tough cycle to break. About 6 in 10 people with credit card debt have had it for at least a year. I don't view credit card balances as a risk to the broader economy, but at the household level, if you're lugging around thousands of dollars with a 20 or 25 or 30% interest rate, that's where it's a big deal for your individual household.
Elizabeth, this new report also highlighted the higher delinquency rates for auto loans. What do you make of that?
Yeah, and this is something that we've seen in the past couple of years, especially after new and used car prices went up so much during the pandemic. And so what this shows is people who are getting behind on their car payments, Diane, that number of people, or that percentage of people, is increasing. Overall, Americans have about $1.7 trillion in auto loan debt. That number is going up, and really the researchers that we've been talking to at the New York Fed say part of this is just the fact that car prices have been so high. And this does underscore the reality that a lot of households are dealing with high prices persistently and those day-to-day costs. We've talked a lot about the inflation report this week, Diane. You saw car repairs, car prices continuing to go up, and that's part of the reason why people are getting behind on those payments.
And Ted, if someone is holding credit card debt, what are some tips to be able to pay that off quickly? Because it can get hard.
Right. My favorite tip is to get a 0% balance transfer credit card. Move your existing high-cost debt over to a new card that won't charge interest for up to 21 months in some cases. The Wells Fargo Reflect and the Citi Simplicity are a couple of good examples. Now, if you don't have good credit, or if you have more than $5,000 or $6,000 in credit card debt, then I would point you to nonprofit credit counseling. Reputable agencies like Money Management International and GreenPath, they can often negotiate something like a 6 or 7% rate over 4 or 5 years. You don't need great credit. It's a really good option for people.
All right, ABC News correspondent Elizabeth Schulze, Bankrate senior industry analyst Ted Rossman, thank you both.